Okay, welcome everybody. Day 2 of our budget hearings. Before I turn it over to Lorian to kind of walk us through what we got today, I just want to make an acknowledgement. I want to appreciate all the staff, all the people that have come into a lot of work going through the presentations yesterday. It's quite obvious there's a lot of work that goes into this and a lot of discussion. So thank you for the time that each department, finance, budget team, Lorian, your team, thank you. I would also say that as we begin to ask questions as a commission, I want the public to be very aware. We're not making the budget here today. We're asking questions for each individual commissioner to kind of vet this out, flesh out, and try to understand the state of the union and the department and the needs. But we are certainly not making decisions today on what the budget's going to look like. I've had a couple texts yesterday, and I wanted to make sure I was clear with the public that we're asking questions because we want to understand what's going on in your department. So with that being said, Lorian, take it away.
Okay, we have 6 presentations today. We're starting with our election commissioner, Laura Rainwater, and we'll be on page 59 of your binders.
Hello, Laura, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners and County staff. Thanks for allowing me to be here to present our 2026 budget. I first want to say thank you. The last 2 years, I just had my 2-year anniversary on my 13th election in 2 years.
Wow.
But I have to say thank you to you, the 3 of you, and the 2 new commissioners for the support you've given our office over the last 2 years. You have allowed us to right size our staff, which creates a much more efficient organization and department. And we are running smoothly. We are creating redundancy, which we had not seen. And not to mention our building. We are all very, very excited to get moved into a new beautiful office facility later this year. And we couldn't have done it without your support. So I just want to say thank you for the support you've given me and my staff. So we will move on. Our workforce strength, we are at 100% workforce strength for right now. The department has 2 funding centers, the administration side, which is a 100% full strength. All positions are filled. And then the operations side, which is actually the election side. And the reason you see open positions, those are the poll worker positions that are not filled currently. We have a total of 14 FTEs for administration and 9.2 FTEs for election operation. And again, it is at 8.4%, 91% because of election workers not being currently employed. Some of these services we provide, the mandatory services, fall under statutorily required both at the state level and federal level. Obviously, election administration, candidate services, including filings and candidate filings and reports, election equipment and management, security of that equipment, voter registration list maintenance, which is going on right now and will continue throughout the rest of this year, voter registration application processing, expansion of voter registration, SAFE Act compliance, which is the federal act compliance for elections, election worker hiring and management. Every year on election day, we are the largest employer in the county based on the number of election workers we have to hire for every election. Polling place management, advanced voting by mail, UACAVA and MOVE Act for our overseas voters, both military and citizen, ballot preparation, printing, and data orders and Cora requests are all mandatory. The non-mandatory, the fun side of elections for us is the community outreach, our sticker contest, which has seen great success and is taking over the state. Other counties are also implementing sticker contests. It's a great way to get our youth involved in elections. And then we also do mock elections for school districts. Not really mock elections. They are legitimate elections for the schools, but we're doing one next week, I think, for Colwich for their student council. So when we have time, we like to do those. So those are the fun events. Some of our strengths I mentioned earlier. We are full staffing, and it allows us to be much more efficient and smooth in our operation. We are becoming with every single election, my 13th election in 2 years, we become better and better with what we are doing. Both Brad, Rick, and myself received our official state of Kansas election officer certification. We presented that last week. That is basically a 2-year program. It's 9 classes over 2 years. Each class is 3 to 4 hours. So very pleased to have that under our belt. And then under another strength is the election equipment security and maintenance that goes on throughout the year. Some of our weaknesses is really focuses around election worker pay and recruiting election workers. I did not include that as a budget package this year, mainly because we've been given so much over the last 2 years. That's not to say next year you won't see that as a decision package, because I think we need to visit that again next year once we get moved into our new facilities. Opportunities, there's always more opportunities to engage with the public and promote election education and transparency. We have been doing a lot more voter registration drives, naturalization ceremonies. Every month we're going out to the Hughes Metroplex for those naturalization ceremonies, and obviously our sticker contest and student engagement. We are also go out to high schools and talk with seniors and get them registered to vote before they turn 18. Some of the threats, we have mentioned this in past meetings. There will be a big equipment purchase coming up either in 2027 or 2029. We are not really sure as to when that will occur, but we have been warned that it'll probably be twice the funding that we had in 2017. So you're looking at probably $11 to $12 million for that equipment purchase. And then obviously the misinformation and disinformation that surrounds elections that we deal with, mainly through social media and emails that we receive. Our requested budget for next year does show an increase, and it's because it's a gubernatorial year. We always have more costs associated with that, and that usually surrounds election worker pay, staffing those polling sites. I will tell you, next year's elections will have much higher turnout. We already have 2 constitutional amendments, one on the primary ballot and one on the general ballot. There could be a third that really drives voter turnout. So we will have higher turnout next year. So the increase in budget is all in personnel. It's just over 200,000 for an increased budget. Otherwise, nothing else has changed from what we had for this year. This slide again shows the funds that we are requesting an additional 240,000, I believe, for that cost of the gubernatorial elections. And that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Any questions?
Pretty smooth.
Pretty
Appreciate
smooth.
that. Commissioners, any questions?
Just a quick one. When and who determines if we have to have new election equipment in 27 or 29?
It has to do with the VVSG 2.0. The hardware,
What's that?
the actual, let me think what it stands for. Voluntary Voting System Guidelines. There is 2.0 that was published in 2021. The hardware, the new express vote machines, the DS 300s, which we don't have, we have 200s, and the DS 950, the vote tabulators, are already certified under those guidelines. They are waiting on the software to be certified. That is still in development, and that is what we are waiting on. So that's why it could get delayed until 2029, but we're still thinking it's going to happen in 2027.
Okay.
Good question.
Do we have state and federal assistance on that? It's just
No,
No.
but you may recall that last year, well, January of this year, the commission authorized a year-end transfer of cash from the general fund between the excess investment income and the ARPA revenue replacement. We actually did a substantial transfer, 9-ish million. Does that sound right? To the equipment reserve. And while it has not yet been formally earmarked by this commission for that purpose, that was kind of what we had talked about as an option at the time. So we do have some significant funds there. I would see us at the same thing this year. If we have excess investment income that's not earmarked for something else, we would come to you. I'll look to Lorian and verify that I'm not fibbing, but we would come to you as another year-end transfer and ask to move that money over to the equipment reserve for that purpose.
And we are working with the other 3 bigs and doing a joint RFP, like similar to the one you did in 2017.
We're pretty, I'm not firm on that number, but that's a pretty safe bet, 11 to 12 million.
So it was, we had set aside 7 million before, we actually spent 6 million from the folks that that I've heard about, read about things that I've seen. Yes, at least twice that number is what we're hearing as a reasonable expectation
Okay.
based on what's being certified
Mhm.
or expected to be certified at a federal level and then down at the state.
Okay.
There will also be new Elvis software coming out and there'll be an increased fee. Right now, we pay $65,000 a year for the Elvis software.
Which is your voter registration system.
Right, right.
Okay. Well, that's helpful to know. I'm thankful we're working ahead. Appreciate the leadership of that. So, Commissioner Huff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, you talked about an increase in cost for salary, but we didn't talk, is this more FTEs? Because I don't,
No, it's no more FTEs. It's all election worker pay, and the increased cost for a gubernatorial year.
so gubernatorial over a city
Like
school.
this year,
municipal year.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The last time we did the election equipment, I was here when that happened and the process, it took several years actually to go
Mhm.
through the process. I know we saved up some money over a couple of years. That's a strategy to get where we need to be rather than trying to do this in 1 year. So we ought to have that conversation soon. In this budget, maybe we ought to talk about getting ready for the future in that regard. The other thing we did was we actually brought in vendors and we got to look at the equipment. I know that ES&S is pretty popular right now, but things are changing. There are some other systems out there right now that I think we should take a look at. So I'd like to maybe
Absolutely.
go back and maybe repeat the process of bringing in the machinery, inviting the public and others to take a look at it and see what we don't know.
Out there.
Yeah, see what's out there. And then I guess I know you're not going to like this personally, but I think it's interesting to talk about this. You know, I think Shawnee County still is an example we should consider. They do have one electronic machine per poll site because of the ADA requirements. But they generally push most people towards, again, their default voting method is a traditional paper ballot. And in doing that, the check-in process is a little bit, take that back. I don't know if they use paper poll books or not, but if you did use paper poll books, the prep on the election is different. You're preparing the poll books, but you're not preparing the machinery. So the testing is less, the maintenance is less, the maintenance of machinery over time is less, the security is less. You're going to print paper poll books potentially, and then have paper ballots. The tabulators are still the same. But the election, you shift the attention from what we do currently to different activities. But the net effect is once you check in to vote, the voting process is much faster because there's no limit on machinery. They can take as long as they want to fill out the ballot. And there's a little bit less questions about how technology works. And so there's some advantages to maybe using some older technology, some older ideology on how we do elections. I would love to talk about that.
Okay.
Without getting people upset with me for even bringing this up. I think I also think there's potential savings for the taxpayers. So again, it's just a different way of doing it. It shifts the process from electronic to a little bit maybe more traditional systems, although we still would have a tabulator. And again, whether you have paper poll books or electronic poll books, I think that's something we could discuss further. But the primary change is using a long traditional paper ballot for most voters. Unless they have an ADA requirement, they would be encouraged to fill out the longer ballot. And then
Well, to clarify, express vote machines are just a ballot marking device. They're not a tabulator of any, they're not tabulated at this time. You're just using it to mark your ballot and then you print it out. It's a printer and you can see your vote, who you voted for. It's just a different way. It's an electronic way to mark a ballot versus an ink pen.
I don't want to get into the debate today, but I would just tell you, there's still some things that people don't, there's a barcode that's actually read by the tabulator, not when you make your selections, you can read the English, but you can't read the barcode. I mean, the machine reads the barcode. So there's parts of the people have to trust the process, and it raises questions. And at the end of the day, there's an awful lot of storage and a lot of programming, a lot of verification that happens around those express vote machines. There's more tension on those than I think than and again, most of our space, our programming, our maintenance are about the express vote machines. So if we didn't have to do as much of that, I think that we would have possibly, again, I think the checking can be debated still, but I think the actual voting process would be less expensive
You
That
would
would be
trade
more
out express
understandable.
vote machines for poll print machines so that they could print the paper ballots, because it would take much more than one poll print per polling site to print that many ballots. So,
But anyway, I think we should just talk about that.
Okay.
So I think as we get into the conversation, it is a huge number. And I think it's worthy of at least some analysis on what the options are.
okay.
Okay, pretty good. Any other questions? Easy does it. Thanks, Laura. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Have a good afternoon.
Hey, next we have our county clerk, Kelly Arnold, and we'll be on page 48 of your binders.
It walks in the room at the exact, he could not have timed that that was rather impressive, actually. Yes.
All right. I thought about you doing a grand entrance and staying in.
Yeah.
That's how I'm gonna make my exit, actually. All right.
48.
Is that big enough or good enough for somebody to go in? All right. All right, I will try to make this as painless as possible. A pretty straightforward budget. Don't have any special requests or anything like that at all. So we will get going through this. All right, County Clerk's Office, we have 18 and a half full-time employees. We're kind of divided up into three different sections. You have real estate, where we do real estate transactions, taxation, where we do R&R, mill levies, and then also clerk administration, which you guys a lot of times see with our Secretary of Board of County Commission, resolutions, contracts, licensing, and that kind of stuff. Everything I do is state mandated. So all tasks done in our office are required by state statute that need to be done. And again, some of these same issues of, assisting homestead filings, Board of County Commission, licensing, real estate. A big one we have the last several years is the revenue neutral rate, which takes a significant amount of our time, energy, and resources. Of course, property taxation, mill levies, working with local governments on that, certifying that mill levy to the tax or to the treasurer. Strengths and weaknesses. So strengths are the last couple of years, we've had a pretty good job of keeping full staffing in our office. And if there was one or two that have left, we've been able to fill them with pretty competent employees and applicants. Our office, we do pride ourselves on having excellent communication with our customers. Anybody that calls in, we'll get a live person and we will work with them, whether it's an issue that we can resolve in our office or, make sure they get directed to the right person in another department. Weaknesses, the biggest thing that we have constantly worked on, but we are in a process right now, is our tax system. It's our software. Our software program is over 15 years old, has a number of issues, and essentially the company we're with is moving to a new system. So they really not, updating our old one. Right. So it's kind of like when Microsoft switches, they say everybody has to switch to the new one. So we are working with them right now to get that done. In fact, we will hopefully get some numbers here this week on what that cost is going to be. But we've been working with finance and everybody on that for the last 2 years, actually. Opportunities, we always look with our fellow other elected offices, different departments, of how we can do better jobs of collaborating together for our citizens and the taxpayers who come in and use our services. The one we are using this is the first year we're using it, is sending emails out for our letters and like revenue neutral rate. The treasurer, I believe, just sent the first tax bill with, I think, around 3,000 people that had signed up to receive that for email. We are hopefully at some point be able to build that list up where it actually will save the county some significant money as far as getting our information out, the tax bills, the appraisers, and a revenue neutral rate for us. And threats, as always, the legislature. So we are always playing usually defense on some idea. I'll try to be nice here, sorry. Some idea they may come up with on changes. All right, next 3 slides, I'm going to show you our budget 3 different ways, I guess. Our budget request is 1.66 million. The only thing I want to point out in this one is the truth and taxation for 150,000. That's the relatively new one with the revenue neutral rate letter. So we put that in our budget because we had to pay to make print and send that out. Currently, the last couple of years and the next couple of years, the state of Kansas reimburses us for that amount. So that money gets put back into the general fund. And so that's where that $150,000 is as of right now. Someday I expect that they will not reimburse us. And if they do, then we will be charging, we are to charge the local governments to participate in that revenue neutral rate letter, including the county. For our part, so we spend about, I'm going to say we spend total 120,000 to send that letter out on a countywide level. We would be, in theory, maybe 25% of that. So, I mean, the townships, the cities, everybody will have to chip in on their part of that letter. We actually do have a formula that's not as complicated as I thought it was going to be of how we charge that. So we have practice for that. We thought this year was going to be the first year, but one of the last CCR bills that they passed gave us 2 more additional years. So we're safe for this year and next year. This one is our budget in a different format. As you can see, almost all of it is personnel, and 160,000 in commodities. 150 of that is that R&R stuff I just talked about. So we really only have $16,000 in commodities and contractuals, and that's been a pretty consistent number for my office for a number of years. So I guess I'm done already. I know. Good question.
Okay. Appreciate it, Kelly. Any questions or comments? Clerk's office. Just quick comment. I just want to appreciate your staff. During homestead refunds, we send a lot of people to call or to come upstairs and to go to your guys' office, and just all of your crew that helps with that process. Those that help us with the townships and the discussions and the bridge between the townships and our office. Your staff does a wonderful job in assisting us and assisting our constituents. So
Appreciate it.
I appreciate that a lot.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks,
All
Kelly.
right.
Okay, next we have Tanya Buckingham, our Register of Deeds, on page 54 of your binder.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chairman, Tanya Buckingham, Register of Deeds. And for the budget presentation, I'm going to give Kenley Ziering, our Chief Deputy, an opportunity to present the budget this year.
Wonderful. Hey, Kinley.
Isn't that nice? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Chairman, Commissioners, Kenley Ziering, Chief Deputy, Register of Deeds. We're going to go over the 2026 budget. Our administration area has 4 full-time employees. Our data area is staffed with 15.5 employees for a total of 19.5 positions. On our mandatory services, we're responsible for recording all real estate transactions that take place within Sedgwick County. We process and verify documents, redact information to protect citizens, and ensure that the document history is accessible to the public. Our office also preserves records using various medias and filed military discharge papers such as DD-214s. Our non-mandatory services include the property fraud alert, the veteran and military discount program, and our passport services. But also, just to give you some numbers for our passports, we actually take in quite a bit of revenue. Last year, we ended up right under 100,000 for passports. And this year, we're close to 25,000. On our 3-year horizon, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Our strengths include our recent upgrade to our Fiddler technologies that has improved our security, efficiency, and public access. We now offer a property fraud alert via text, email, or phone, and our experienced staff ensures compliance and trust. Our opportunities are to continue digitizing those records that we have and expanding the online access to the historical documents. We are also looking to community outreach to the area cities to extend our footprint. Promoting services like property fraud, military discount program, and passport services can also increase our impact. And some of the weaknesses just are unrecorded, undigitized records and equipment failure, possible human error and manual data entry, and low public awareness of our services. Our main threats right now are budget constraints or legislative changes, along with staff turnover and the potential loss of expertise. For 2026, we're requesting $1,371,063 from the general fund. And kind of like what Kelly said, another form. Breakdown personnel's $1,327,389, contractual $17,674, commodities $26,000 for a total request of $1,371,063. We don't have any decision packets, alternative reduction, or revenue packets. And again, here's our budget with 19.5 full-time employees. And I'll stand for any questions.
It's a smooth operating machine you guys are down there. Sure. Needs any questions or comments? Good job, Kenley. Appreciate you. Tanya, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys.
Okay, next we'll be moving to the Division of Public Works. We're on page 539 of your binder. And I'll hand it over to Lynn Packer.
We went from the really easy ones to a really challenging ones, huh, Lynn?
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and get those copies out to you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, staff. I'm Lynn Packer, Director of Public Works and County Engineer. I am here with our Public Works department heads, and we're going to talk about our 2026 budget. The next slide is my favorite slide of the whole deck, because if you've been here long enough, you'll know this is going to be the first time in quite some time we don't have any red on our strength, workforce strength. Very, very happy about that. I was very pleased putting this together. I got to take the one from last year and just turn all the colors from red to green and yellow, and that was definitely a highlight. You can see we still have a little bit of room to go, but we have made large headways. I would say I have set a goal for our department to actually fill 100% of our positions by the end of the year. I think we have a real legitimate chance of doing that. It's going to be a tough challenge, but it's something we're aiming for. So as we go into our departments, the first one I'm going to have come up here is Daniel Schrent. He's our Deputy Director of Public Works, and he's going to cover our largest department, which is the Highways Department.
Hi, Daniel.
Hello, I'm Daniel Schrent, and I'm here to talk about highways. So to get into some of our mandatory services, we're required to repair public roads and remove obstructions, prepare plan specs, specifications and estimates, inspect construction. We also inspect all of our bridges. So we have over 600 bridges in Sedgwick County that we are responsible for, and we have staff that inspect those bridges, about 300 per year. We establish standards for roads. We advise the local townships on keeping their roads in a state of good repair. We place and maintain traffic control devices, and we certify completion of infrastructure projects. So all of this is in service of maintaining our 583 miles of roadway and our 605 bridges under our care. Non-mandatory items that we do is we maintain the Sedgwick County Zoo parking lot. You'll be seeing a portion of that under construction this summer. We're not doing all of them. We're just doing a couple of the lots out there. We maintain the pathways inside of Sedgwick County Park. Also the road that goes through Sedgwick County Park, that's not part of our highway system, but we maintain it. The perimeter road at Lake Afton is also something that we take care of. And then public outreach activities are also non-mandatory. All right, so as far as our strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, so recent pay increases have stabilized staffing levels. I hear that as something that's going on across all departments, so that's really great to hear, and it's working well for us. We do have good relationships with cities and townships. That was pretty evident last year. We met with all the cities to discuss annexations to reduce the workload. And then I would also say we have a good reputation for our roads. They are in excellent repair, and I think that's a good bridge, and we hear that from the citizens all the time. I'd like to think that we're kind of the front door to our citizens. Hopefully citizens aren't interacting with our sheriff's department daily, but there are people who interact with our roads every single day. So weaknesses, we do have older equipment, and we are experiencing significant downtime with those. As Lynn indicated, our staffing levels have vastly improved, but that also means that we have inexperienced people out in the field. So we got to make sure we stay safe. So we have increased our safety trainings to make sure that we don't have any accidents that can be avoided out there. And then some of our systems and our technology may not be up to modern levels, but I'll talk a little bit about that later on when we get to the asks portion. Opportunities, we have reduced the number of roads on our system last year. We removed about 20 miles from our maintenance system. We had additional miles that were annexed as well, but we will be responsible in some manner for that. That might be because they are connecting links for cities, so we will still be maintaining those. And then we also had some roads annexed that were on the township system. So we helped out some townships by reducing their workload. And so those were all distributed to 14 different cities last year. We are also using AI for road inspections. So that's mostly in conjunction with R175 for identifying which roads need to be receiving maintenance treatments. And then we're increasing training and development initiatives. And finally, threats. Of course, during the BOCC meeting yesterday, you were informed of our federal funds that we get a lot of in public works. And that's a little bit under threat right now. Limited financial flexibility restricts investments in staff, equipment, and innovation. And then finally, the risk of losing staff if salary adjustments do not keep pace with market trends. All right, and so here's our budget. You can see we have a budget request of 32 million. It's slightly decreased. And breaking that down by category, a lot of this is just minor adjustments. The one larger change in this is the 2025 budget had $100,000 in there for a study to revisit the Northwest Expressway in conjunction with KDOT. And so that has been removed from this budget. That was just in there for that one single year. So that has been removed. So that was $100,000. And then our decision packages, we do not have any decision packages for this year, but that doesn't mean there's things that we're not looking at. So we did put in a business needs assessment this year. That was for bridge inspections. I did mention that we inspect about 300 bridges per year. And KDOT has changed the manner in which those bridge inspections are being done. So in the past, it was going out in the field, writing stuff down, coming back into the office, inputting into the computer, putting it in a database. And KDOT now has a portal, so that can be done in the field. And so our business assessment that we were looking at was for tablets and for a data connection, so that could all be done exclusively in the field. So we are not asking for that this year. We are working with the new software. We are using an old tablet that we got from loan from HHW. So we're making use of some equipment that wasn't being used. And then we are using the Wi-Fi that's in our vehicles that we use for telematics. I think that's where this is we'll see how that works. We do have limitations on how much data we can put through that system. And so we might need to come back and say, we'd like to upload pictures and everything like that, because they do have a pretty minimal bandwidth on those. And then we also know a little further into the future, AutoCAD, which is a software that we use in-house to design roads and our maintenance projects, that is going to get significantly more expensive come 2028. So that's just on the horizon. Right now, we spend in excess of $40,000 for a 3-year subscription for all of our software. And talking with our vendor, it looks like the next time we go in for a 3-year subscription, that will jump to over 100,000. So that's on the horizon. Is there any questions before we move on to noxious weeds?
Daniel, quickly. So the 600 bridge world, remind me, and maybe helpful with the first time through this. I thought we looked at every bridge
Yeah,
all the 6 years, but you're saying 300 a year. So we look at every bridge every other year.
correct. So we have I think it was 606 bridges.
Right.
We're required to inspect them every 2 years. And so generally we inspect bridges south of Kellogg in 1 year, about 300. And then the next year we'll inspect the bridges north of Kellogg, and then we flip-flop back and forth. So
I'll also add in, depending on the condition of the bridge and the type of the bridge, we always have a handful of bridge that require every 12-month or every 6-month inspections. Those are usually a little farther in between because those end up on the CIP replacement schedule. But we always got a handful that we had to do every year.
Daniel, you said 606 bridges. What was the road miles again?
582, that dropped by 20 miles.
We used to say 600 and 600. So yeah, now I see it.
I
Okay.
still have those numbers in my head.
Me too. Okay, very good. Commissioner Howe.
Mr. Chairman, just on the budget summary there, is the interfund transfer primarily a sales tax fund? Okay. And the personnel and contractuals, are those bond and interest and property tax dollars? Where's the $7 and $4 million coming from?
So this is tricky. It's in the transfer out because part of it goes to the CIP, local sales tax, road and bridge fund, and part of it goes to bond and interest. But because they're transfers of cash between funds, highway fund is fund 206, it's going to fund 301, which is bond and interest. So that by GAAP rules, that's a transfer out. So that's, like you said, mostly sales tax. It is sales tax, but some of it goes to bond and interest, and at that 1.6 million, the 1.597 that's in there every single year. The rest, the delta, goes to that CIP fund.
Okay, so does this include grant funds then as well?
No.
This is no revenue.
This would not, this is what they're showing you here is just what's in their departmental budget. And so when they get federal grants, that's really by way of project funding. And so that goes into the CIP fund. It would not go into their operating
But does it
budget.
show on this budget at all?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I'll chew on this a little bit longer. Thank you
Good
again.
clarity. Thanks, Bishop. Daniel, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Furry, Noxious Weed Director.
Mark?
So everything we do pretty much is mandated by the state of Kansas by the regulations. So some of the things that we do that are mandatory is we provide herbicides to the public at cost share, which means we buy them at a wholesale price and sell them to citizens at a reduced price. Right now, it's 25% is what's mandated by the law. We provide education to our citizens and government agencies. So I work with other government agencies, the state of Kansas, city of Wichita mostly, on how to control their noxious weeds or what we can do to help them. We assist landowners by providing inspections, treatment, and legal notices if that's necessary. If a neighbor complains against a neighbor because they suspect they have noxious weeds, and we're required to go out and inspect the property and issue legal notices if that becomes an issue. It's only an issue if they refuse to comply, so which is pretty rare. And we also treat all the noxious weeds on county-owned right-of-ways and our properties. Some of the non-mandatory things we do is we also contract with townships and the KDOT to treat noxious weeds on their properties, mostly right-of-ways. We go around and inspect properties for musk thistle and serratia. We have over 600 properties that we inspect every year and help those landowners with their control of those weeds. We mow some of the right-of-ways, especially curb and gutter along what they call bike paths. So we got 17 miles or so that we maintain because we have smaller equipment than the big mowers have, so they don't break the sidewalks and things. And we help the Public Works Department with seeding some of their projects, stream remediation, some bridges. When they go in and clean out a bridge, we'll go in and help seed after those projects. So some of our strengths is we have a fairly tenured staff. We've adopted electronic mapping and reporting, which has helped us go paperless. And while we're in the field, we're able to fill out our paperwork and turn it in. Also, it tracks where we've been spraying and what we've been spraying, but both on personal property and on right-of-ways. In case somebody comes up and says, well, you sprayed my rows that I had out in front of my house, and we can prove to them, yes, we were there on that day, but we did not spray in front of your house. So it's kind of it kind of protects us a little bit. Some of the weaknesses we have is we've had one position that has turned over several times in the last 4 years. Training for this position takes over a year to go through the whole season because we do many things that are on a seasonal basis. So it's been a little difficult to try to keep somebody for that period of time. And our equipment's getting old as typical. So I just checked with Bo. 2 of our trucks have over 15 points and 1 has 13. So we're getting close. Now, some of the opportunities we do have a new pickup that replaced an older vehicle. It was one of the hybrids that we couldn't tow anything or put a sprayer on. So we have a pickup now that we can utilize and hopefully help fill that gap a little bit. One of the threats that we have that's looming on the horizon is the Secretary of Agriculture has on his desk a piece of paper that will sign 5 new noxious weeds into regulation this year. He hasn't signed it yet. We don't know why. But if he does, then bush honeysuckle, common teasel, and cutleaf teasel will be added to the list, which are all present in Sedgwick County. Bush honeysuckle is very rampant in Sedgwick County. So it could actually add a lot to our workload. And the tariffs may increase our chemical costs. Most probably 100% of all chemicals actually are manufactured in China. So haven't seen that yet, but we can expect that to come. As far as ask for a budget next year, basically it's just a slight reduction. And that is in the personnel line. So it's 437,112 for personnel versus what we had this year. And our commodities and contractuals haven't changed. So depending on what happens with the Secretary of Agriculture, and if he signs the new noxious weeds in order, we may be asking for more help next year, either in equipment and or one more personnel. So,
Mark, thank you. Any questions here? Yeah, Commissioner Howe.
I'm just curious on that, providing herbicides to the public. Do the people have to have some type of certification or license to have that, or?
no, we sell only one chemical that you have to have a license, and that's regulated by the state. And if they want that particular chemical, then they have to show us that they have a license, and we have to keep that record for 3 years and show that we sold it to them for 3 years. So
Are your customers primarily agricultural customers, or are they?
the walk-ins are typically residents of smaller communities, or even Wichita, but farmers do come in. But usually we deal with farmers out in the field, and they hire us to spray. Or
You say you sell this at a reduced cost. That means the difference in cost is borne by taxpayers here or by?
yes,
who's
your
paying?
property tax offsets that cost.
And this is a mandate from the state.
Yes, it is.
Okay, then on the other side of the sheet here, when you provide noxious weed treatments on things like townships and private property and other areas, is there any fees that are charged to those?
Yes, we do that for hire. We have a contract right now with KDOT. So we charge them an hourly rate plus chemicals. And when we charge township or KDOT, we charge full rate what we pay for it, because they don't pay property tax. So it doesn't offset that cost.
So I'm curious if somebody, a resident or whoever wants to connect with you all to buy herbicides, where do they go, and where do they find information about that?
Our website has all the information on our hours, and the chemicals aren't listed on that website. But we do have in our office, we have a sheet there that shows all the chemicals that we provide.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Mark, you mentioned 4 noxious weeds coming on, bush honeysuckle, or the other 3?
So the 3 that we have in the county are bush honeysuckle, cutleaf teasel, and common teasel. There are 2 that aren't actually even in Kansas, diffuse knapweed and spotted knapweed. And they add those as a threat more than we're actually going to have to take care of them. So far there.
I had no idea until I traveled with my father-in-law, a rancher, with my sickle, and to see what that does to a pasture is just wild.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just curious, is there a discounted price when the public wants to get it? You know, like if they've got a thistle problem or something like
Oh yeah,
that?
it's 25% less than what our cost is. So I will go out for bid and say I get a product for $20 a gallon. I will sell it to them for $15 a gallon.
Do we have some kind of communication, or maybe a lot of the rural folks understand this, but it's very important, you know, I understand.
No, just our website, pretty much.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm here to talk about stormwater management services. My name is Scott Lindeback, stormwater manager. Bulk of our department is handled by mandatory requirements. The first and foremost one that most people are familiar with is the Wichita Valley Center Flood Control Project, the MS Mitchell Floodway, also known as. It's a long time project. It's been a joint service. Joint service between the city and the county for some time. The other mandatory services is our MS4 permit that we have with the KDHE. We're a phase 2 community, was established in 2001, and also the review of subdivision drainage plans for new development, redevelopment, making sure they comply with state requirements. We also, there was some time ago, the commission identified, as well as the public identified 4 streams to be maintained by stream maintenance, which includes the Little River, the Big River, Chester Creek, and Cowskin Creek. They're about 37 miles of river and creeks that are maintained by stream maintenance. The non-mandatory services are stream stabilization projects like was done in Derby recently. Then also cleaning bridges. We did an inspection of bridges and found about 166 bridges that needed to be cleaned out. And that's about 27% of the overall inventory. Completing drainage studies and also this design of between 6 and 10 small drainage projects each year that are done in-house. Associated with that would be also the attaining the necessary permits for those works. Strengths and weaknesses, the department's fully staffed. It's been staffed for a long time. The average tenure is about 20 years between the 7 employees that are in that department, allowing work to get done quickly and efficiently. The weaknesses are heavy equipment's getting to be very costly, and we're seeing that the age of our equipment's creeping up, and just more maintenance associated with that equipment, as you've heard with other departments. Opportunities include the culvert inventory that we recently did. We found that about 25% of our culverts needed some attention, and so we're going to be programming some of that to be either replaced or maintained properly. Other things is the resolution to the stormwater resolution needs to be updated. And so there might be some opportunity to discuss water quantity and quality requirements throughout unincorporated Sedgwick County. Threats would be that there would be a new 2028 county permit for Sedgwick County with KDHE. EPA has already identified that they may not like the point system that we're on today, and they may have other requirements, but that's yet to be determined. The other threat is that flood control identified that they don't have, they have not been they have not been billing us for heavy equipment. And so there's over $7 million of equipment programmed out. That'd be about 7. Flood control would have about $370,000 a year worth of our county share. They haven't billed us yet for that, but that's a discussion that they've brought up a couple months ago on a conversation. This is just something on the horizon to look into. They've been funding on the heavy equipment out of their general obligation bonds. So, and their fleet CIP. This year, we're requesting $2.5 million thereabouts for 2026. The overall budget, primarily it's personnel expenses outside of what's being controlled by flood control. It's about a 4% reduction in personnel expenses for total cost of $2,551,871 with a 23% reduction. And there is no decision packages at this time for stormwater management.
Hey, Scott, thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions or comments?
All right.
Thanks. Good. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Long time no see.
I know. It just seems like earlier today. Okay. Susan Erlingline, Environmental Resources. Like to review the mandatory and non-mandatory projects that we do. We work with Scott and the stormwater. My staff goes out and inspects the outfalls and new developments to determine if they're doing it correctly. And so we have the ability to find them if they're not doing it correctly, but you'd rather work with them and make sure that it's, that you work with them and make sure everything is done correctly. We inspect and license solid waste facilities. We license the solid waste haulers, and we develop the solid waste plan, implement it, maintain it, and I'll be presenting that plan update to you next Wednesday at the commission meeting. We also work with special projects, whether it's recycling, electronics, waste tire collection that we just did a few weeks ago, the household hazardous waste facility and remotes, education going out in the classrooms. We also do some non-mandatory things like working with the county departments on what chemicals they store, how they're stored, making sure they have safety data sheets and know how that's working. And whether we do it or the county would hire someone else to do it, it has to be done. We work with research. Couple of examples I can give is the 29th and Grove area and the groundwater contamination. There's over 200 active contaminated sites in Sedgwick County right now. So we deal with those and help out. We work with the solar farms that have applied and worked with planning department and others to develop the regulations for the solar farms. And we looked at the wind farms as well, and it was determined to not allow those at this time in Sedgwick County. We also support the conservation district and work with them and the farmers on best management practices. And I have a little bit of that on this slide. Our strengths, we're fully staffed right now, which is great. We were having some trouble keeping people in HHW, but I think we have a very strong group now. We partner with the state and local governments. City of Wichita works with us on some of the stormwater information. We supply them with chemical amounts that we collect every year, and they use that for their stormwater permit to show that it's being taken care of and not dumped in the rivers. The expansion of the HHW is for safety reasons, as well as expanding our programs. And one strength there that we'll see is that expansion, and that's also under opportunities. We'll increase the swap and shop area, which has been saving us around $69,000 a year in costs that we would have been paying the contractor. Larger area will allow us to have more chemicals out, which means less money for the contractor, more for the public to pick up for free. And so we're saving money, the public's saving money, and everybody wins. Continue with work conservation district. There's a city in the county that has high nitrates in their public water, and we're working with the farmers in the area through the conservation district to help reduce the amount of fertilizers they use, which is where the nitrates come through to get into the groundwater. When we have a USDA grants available again, we've been working with some schools on reducing food waste. It's amazing. We've been out to some schools and for a solid week weighed the amount of food being thrown away. It's quite a bit. And USDA requires that they have food from every category. So you see a kid when they're checking out at the cashier saying you have to take that fruit, this packet of apples. I watched. It goes immediately into the nearest trash can as they walk through the area. So there needs to be better education and getting food the kids will eat that's in that category. Weaknesses is the funding of the stormwater projects that we've had and worked with. We had a stormwater management board that I was staffed to, and we worked up applications for different cities to say, we'd like to do this project to help reduce flooding in our community. And it was in a point system. The problem is there was no money to pay for those projects. And we were looking at 1/10 cent sales tax, which is what Johnson County started back decades ago. And they have received millions of dollars to have flood projects up in the Kansas City area. So we've had field trips up there and looked at it. is something we would like sometime in the future to have in our community to help flooding issues. And we lack of any recycling facilities that are true material recovery facilities in our county increases the cost. What's collected here, curbside recycling, ends up in South Hutchinson at their recycling facility. So that's more travel, more wear and tear on the roads, more costs in that transportation. Threats, federal funding reductions for grants that we've been looking at, rising costs have impacted our special projects, contractor fees, cost of fuel, all of that. Our contractor fees for getting rid of household hazardous waste goes up every year. And natural disasters, we have an air curtain burner and tub grinder we use to help get rid of tree limbs after events that are tornadoes or high wind or ice events on tree limbs. That the more disasters you have, the more the equipment's used, the more it wears down, and you need to pay for replacement parts. Looking at our budget, you can see the majority of it is from the dedicated solid waste fee that's on the property bills. Very little of it is general fund, and part of that goes to the conservation district. 40,000 goes to them. The total you can see is just over 2,800,000 in 25 and 2,986,000 in 26. And this shows the reason for that. The personnel costs, you can see slightly less in 26, contractuals, slightly more, commodities, less. Interfund transfers kicks in 26 for the household hazardous waste expansion. So that's why 26 jumped up, and there's a 5.2% increase because of the interfund transfer to pay for the facility. Decision package, we didn't have any, but as was mentioned before by Daniel, requirements for some of the things we do that want to have electronically done now out in the field, especially with our stormwater inspections. So in the future, we may be asking for some funds for software and equipment. So when we're out in the field, is GPS connected and is saying, we're here, we find water that shouldn't be here, there's a leak. And we have found that where farmers had leaks in their irrigation system and didn't know about it, and they're flooding the ditches. So that's what I've had for you today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, very good, Susan. Thank you. Any questions? Good. Thank you.
Okay, so as a division, we have about a 38, almost $39 million total budget that's relatively flat with some of the explanations already given for the various differences. But overall, just a flat budget for 2026. Overall, again, no asks, no reductions. However, we understand the current financial, environment we're in right now. We're going to push those out and look at other things we can do as much as possible. But there are some regulations changing that are probably going to affect us negatively and require future decision packages. Okay. Any other last chance for any questions for any part of the division?
Please, just real quick. Thank you. In all four of your divisions, course of time, that very responsive, at least to us when we have an issue or just even field a question for the citizen or the property owner and the township and blah, blah, blah.
Thank you.
Thank you all for what you do. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Lynn, who deals with the relationship with the rural water districts?
Rural water districts, if
That's state, but do we have a touch point there?
a lot of times, Susan or Scott will talk with them a little bit, but typically they are for us an independent and just a utility, a public utility.
Okay, got it. Okay. Well, you're right on that org chart. I remember for my first two budgets, man, that thing was very red. And I thought your department was really one of the more challenged in regards to staffing. and you guys have done a hell of a job. I mean, fantastic job. So
We've had a lot of help from our administrative manager who has really taken advantage of the funds that you guys have approved for increased salaries, and she's run with it, and we've been able to bring in some good staff. eh, Unfortunately, a lot of them came from our partner cities coming this way. But it was great because they had some public works experience as
Yeah.
they came over and hit the ground running and really helped us
well,
out.
it's impressive. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we are scheduled for a break now. page 65 for human resources. And I'm going to hand it over to Sheena.
Hey, Sheena.
Hello. Good afternoon. Sheena Schmetz, Chief Human Resources Officer. Today we are going to talk about the Division of Human Resources. We support all divisions and departments within Sedgwick County. We serve to assist both employees and the organization. We are made up of 5 key areas, including administration, benefits, compensation and classification, work environment, and employment and training. Today's presentation will only focus on the department and the general fund, and we will not be talking about any benefits or in the benefit fund. Don't be alarmed by this sheet. Typically, we are all green, but I will tell you the areas that are in red, we currently are in the process of hiring for those positions. So if you were to ask me in 2 to 3 weeks what this would look like, it would be all green. So I don't want you to be alarmed by any of the red that you see up there. Human Resources has 21 active positions. However, our budget also houses 3 full-time equivalents in our shared leave category, which is indicated at the bottom. So you'll notice on page 67, it does say 25 FTEs, but we have 21 positions serving human resources. These are just placeholders for when an employee is approved for a catastrophic leave. HR has spent several months reviewing workload and efficiencies within our department. We have combined the HR assistants from our records and employment areas. The assistants are now cross-trained in both areas and can serve customers more efficiently, and it also broadens their scope of work. We no longer need 2 employee relations specialists. I liken that to we have a great work environment that has focused on improving the work organization. We have reclassified one of our specialists to a project manager to assist with organizational and departmental projects, and that is one of those open positions. And we have also removed one position in HR due to lack of work. So again, we've been making sure that we are making the best use of our employees' time, and that reduction is down here in the white box. We do a lot of mandatory things in human resources. We have what we call the alphabet soup that we have to abide by. So really, you can look at those. I'm not going to go through all of those. But on our non-mandatory side, we have training, our recruitment and recruitment efforts, supplemental benefits that we offer, including vision and dental. Our SWOT analysis, one thing that you will notice on here is we have technology in every category because we see it as a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, and a threat. But for our strengths, technology really does help us be more efficient, not only for our employees in the organization, but also candidates, as you know, from approving our text messaging options. We have had stable staffing levels. And again, don't be alarmed by our chart, but we do not have a lot of turnover. We have a strong cross-training effort that's going on throughout the department, and we like to always review our process efficiencies to make sure that we're doing things that are most efficient. Opportunities, again, include technology, specifically AI technology, our customer service delivery, how can we do things better and more efficiently for those that we serve, and to make database decisions. Some of our weaknesses include technology. We're always sensitive to any type of threat that we may have. Oftentimes we work with IT and you've seen those phishing emails go out, but we're not really phishing. We just want to make sure everyone is strong in their IT. Staff training is one of our weaknesses. Now, I mentioned on our strengths, we have good cross-training, but oftentimes we don't have resources to send staff to outside training to keep up on human resources trends or trends within the field. And also communication, we can always do a better job to serve our customers. Our threats, including those technology, external factors such as wages and talent. I think we've talked about that in several departments. Federal regulations or laws that come out, sometimes we have to adapt very quickly, and that is sometimes very difficult. And then also the benefits cost. Medical is something that we're always watching. In fact, we're working on it earlier this week with Lindsay, and CAPERS and KPNF of things that are outside of our control. In the general fund, it has decreased ever so slightly, but we are requesting $2,326,388 for our departmental use. This is just a breakdown of that. We've moved a little bit from contractuals down to commodities, but other than that is relatively stable. We do have one decision package that we were asked to put in here. You might recall in years past, we've talked about how to keep up employee morale. This is a request for holiday pay, and this would be paying additional funds to employees who are working 4 or more hours on the actual holiday. This request is for $2.6 million. And again, this would be for employees working 4+ hours on the actual holiday. We have approximately 500 employees who actually work on those holidays, and it would be in addition to the holiday pay that they currently receive. This is just a breakdown asking again for that 2.6, which is inclusive of taxes. And a breakdown of our HR budget, again, $2,326,387. And any question?
Okay. Sheena, thank you. I'm sure we'll dig in a little bit more about holiday pay piece there. I will have some questions. It's just strengthening the holiday pay package now. Is it just growing that, or is it a separate?
It would be in addition to the holiday pay now.
Okay.
Employees receive a full day's worth of pay.
Right.
And this would be an additional $200 if they're working 4 or more hours on the actual holiday itself. How we have the system set up, how we have to set this up, is we put them into the payroll system, and it's whatever observed holidays that the commission approves is when our current holiday pay is paid out.
I see.
Sheena, can you use a real life example of a holiday, of the way we currently do it, and the way it would happen if we propose this new policy?
So for example, if Christmas fell on a Saturday, we would observe that holiday on Friday, the 24th. And so the holiday pay that we currently have would be paid out on the 24th. Then if someone was working on the 25th, this is where the additional $200 would come in.
I see.
Yeah.
Currently, they get nothing on the Christmas day, right?
Yes. And it's confusing because we're using the same terminology and we would have to change that.
Okay.
But we recognize that.
Well, we'll dig in on that. I don't really have any more questions, just a comment. You've heard almost every department come up and say, hey, part of the stability is because of compensation and the morale and things that have come, and they've thanked the commission. And to be quite frank, I mean, it's your department and your leadership and your people that have really advocated for the 3,000 employees in Sedgwick County. We've made some motions and taken some votes and supported it, but a lot of the directions come from you in your office. So I just want to make sure that the employees of Sedgwick County government know how much work you've done to impact their lives.
I would be amiss if I didn't say that the two ladies right behind you had a huge lift in that, and finance as well, and payroll. It's a team effort to get all this done, and ERP as well.
Yeah, well, a lot of people are saying thanks, and department heads, but it's very important that people know that it was HR that took the lead in a lot of these things. So we appreciate you greatly.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions, comments?
Yeah.
Sheena, I think I respect what Chairman said, if we dig down into this holiday thing.
Mhm.
So the 500 or so, are those sheriff and fire, they already have a special holiday pay thing, or is this?
They're the same as any other employee right now.
So this
So
500 would be everybody across the board.
on average, we have about 500 employees working on actual holidays.
Well, and as Chairman said, I think we dig into this later
Yeah.
when we talk about compensation, but first of all, this organization is about a half and half. Half of our members work 24/7 or do the kinds of work that they're working weekends and holidays. And the other half is not. The other half is more administrative in nature. This target is for the people that have to do the unsavory work of weekends, evenings, holidays, where the rest of us get to be home, they have to work. So you're targeting the 1,500 or so employees we have that fall into that category. That's number one. We've always been looking for ways to give them treatment, special treatment to some degree, because they do special kinds of work. And this includes Lynn's people that are out working streets, et cetera. And ComCare crisis. So it's not, don't think public safety is across the spectrum. There's a number of people here. So that's number one. They all get holiday pay today. It's a somewhat of a flawed system. What Sheena's recommending is a fix to the flaw, but it does cost money. So we'll dig into that more. I just, as you think about that, that's what we're trying to get accomplished. But
That makes sense.
And again, this was something that has been on the plate for quite some time. We've had other things such as bilingual pay that we've talked about as well. This was just one of those things we were asked to bring forward this year.
Okay, we'll dig in. Thank you, Sheena.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Okay, we're moving to our last presentation of the day. It's finance and community development. We'll be on page 77 of your binders. And Lindsay will be here to present for you.
CFO is presenting.
I got mine.
Gonna go.
Thank you.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hello, commissioners. Okay. There's a lot of chat. We'll give it a second to settle. I'm going to stare at Commissioner Meitzner till he quits. He's not even listening. See,
I just go ahead and start. I think that he.
I think this is funnier. You about ready? Sorry, I couldn't resist. It was too fun. Okay, so I am your final presentation of the day. It is a lot of information. I'm going to move quickly. If you want to stop and chat about anything in particular, just slow me down. Okay, so the first thing, and we are going to be moving through multiple tabs of your budget book. So apologies in advance. We're going to start on page 77 with the Division of Finance actual operations. So what you will see on this slide is that we are overall in great shape. We are green. Overall, we of course have our budget department, which we have several representatives here today. We are very grateful to them for all the work they do to prepare this information. We have our accounting department. Within accounting, of course, you know that we have multiple areas. I think everyone's favorite in the organization is payroll. It's nice to have the most popular department in the organization. Of course, accounts payable. So our folks who actually cut the checks out to our thousands of vendors that we deal with in the course of a year. Our revenue management program. So the folks who oversee EMS billing in conjunction with EMS. Also all of the invoicing and everything that we do for all of the contracts that we've got. And then our general accounting program. So the folks who prepared the ACFR, that if you haven't heard about it today, you'll get to hear all about it tomorrow. So our very important work there. We also have our purchasing department. And of course, you get to see Joe Thomas. You call him the most popular guy. Maybe Donna Howerton's the most popular woman as the payroll manager. And of course, they handle a significant amount of dollars, the oversight of everything that is done for the organization. Come on in, guys. Here comes some more of our esteemed leaders in finance. Hope Hernandez, our accounting director, who I just talked about. So then getting to risk management, we do have Elizabeth Wingo, our risk manager in the back of the, or risk director, excuse me, in the back of the room. And so you all have heard lots and lots about how we're trying to grow and develop that program over the last couple of years. We know that there's a tremendous amount of dollars that go into our insurance portfolio. That's all managed through Elizabeth's shop, plus all of our safety, which is becoming increasingly important as we deal with some kind of different levels of intensity from some of the folks who we serve. And then finally, we have our grants compliance department. Michelle Stroot, our grants compliance director, is here. Obviously, you all know that that's a new department. This is the first time you've seen it displayed here. We know that that is becoming increasingly important. I think it was fortuitous that we did this when we did, given all of the increased scrutiny that we know that we're going to be under for the next several years at least. I also would be remiss if I did not call out those folks in our CFO admin. So of course, Brent Shelton, our deputy CFO, who also does all things EcoDevo. And then Anissa Red, who's our economic development analyst. She will be shown later in this, but I did want to say that she is actually on this org chart, even though she's later in the budget. We have our internal financial auditor, Cassandra Rowland, and then Jessica Osmeyer, who actually is going to be an unsung hero in the Wichita Business Journal here in the next couple of months. She does our contract compliance for the organization, helps run the on-base system, and pretty much does all of the back end work and finance that the rest of us don't have the capacity to do, organizes our moves. She's our project manager for the new financial system we're talking about. So we have a fantastic, qualified, specialized staff. You'll see that in budget, we do have one yellow box. We have had a very hard time filling that position. I think you all have heard me lament over the last few days the pay disparity between what the city of Wichita can offer their incoming budget analysts in excess of 70,000 versus about the 55,000 that we start at. And so the positions that we've tried to hire, I think, have been taken away by city of Wichita because of that pay. So just something to be aware of. In terms of what we do that's mandatory, as you might expect, procurement, payroll, external audit. The state has specific budget forms that we're required to fill out. Unfortunately, we don't just get to turn over the beautiful 800-page budget book that they do. There's some actual forms that they prescribe that we do. And then we have to make sure we live within that. Actually, one of the interesting things about being budget director that I don't know everyone knows is if you submit a false budget that you know is false, you can actually go to jail. So budget director carries some fun responsibility. The banking service is obviously taking care of the cash that comes into the county, our accounts receivable, our accounts payable. Because we received federal COVID funding, not that the federal COVID funding itself was mandatory, but because we received it now, making sure that we're compliant is something that's necessary. We do have to do grants compliance for any of our existing grants. And of course, as Justin alluded to yesterday, tort claim and workers' comp claims, just as an employer, we have responsibility to do that. In terms of non-mandatory services, we don't have to go after grants. We know that the commission has said through its most recent strategic plan that that's something we ought to do. We don't have to. We don't have to invest our cash, but shame on us if we don't. EMS billing, that's something that finance does. We wouldn't have to do that. That could go back to the department, or we could outsource that, though we have not had great luck when we've tried that the 2 times before that we've done it since I've been at the county. The budget office provides some tremendous financial analysis, issue papers, this fancy budget book, some of those things, the reports that you get on a monthly and quarterly basis, a lot of that information, the financial forecast, that's not necessary. But it again would be silly, I think, as an organization our size, if we didn't do it. Contracted administration, so the on-base work that Jessica does is not critical to the organization, at least not to have it come out of finance. Division administration, we don't necessarily have to have the level of oversight that we do. We have our internal financial audit system that provides greater assurance, but it's not necessary. Foreign trade zone, you've heard quite a bit about. Again, that's and it has very little financial impact to the organization, but is a great benefit to be able to offer. Our safety program, risk administration, and economic development also are things that we do that we think are important, but aren't mandatory under any state or federal law. In terms of strengths and weaknesses, I think you're going to hear a lot of similar things to what you heard from folks yesterday. We are at near full staffing. We have a stable leadership team, and most of the contracts that we are overseeing right now, our audit contract and things like that, have some pretty manageable escalators. It's not like what we just heard where you have an annual cost going from 40,000 to 100,000. In terms of our weaknesses, though, we know one of you heard from our auditor this morning. The rest of you will hear from our auditor tomorrow about additional standards that are being rolled out by GASB. All of those are complex and cost money. We've actually had to enter into some software leases to help us with actually monitoring our software leases. So that is a challenge for us. We also know that because we have so many specialized positions, when those go away, they're hard to fill. And then the one position type that we talked about in budget that's been hard to fill. In terms of opportunities, we will have a new financial system later this year. It's our first one since 2002. So we're all waiting with bated breath to see how that goes. We do now have some more centralized opportunities for grants compliance, and we'll look for synergies and opportunities down the road to keep doing more of that, so that staff in those departments can spend their time on other things. We also want to re-examine the way we do things in terms of consolidation or new ways to look at some of our older problems. And so that's something that I think is an exciting opportunity to think about some of the collaborations between city and county for purchasing or some of those things. In terms of threats, this is exactly what Brent talked about in his quarterly report yesterday. Geopolitical instability is off the charts. That affects supply chain. The tariffs, of course, are a challenge. We have the market volatility that's going to affect us on interest rates in terms of our investments, but also our capital improvement projects. Obviously, federal funding is a big issue for us in finance. And then obviously state legislative actions to impact the budget, assess value growth, all of those things will continue to be something that we have to be vigilant about monitoring and conveying to you all what those things are. And then natural disasters, as well as increases in our payroll insurance costs. Our budget looks bananas because of ARPA and the state mental health hospital. So what you see on this slide, that's a technical term, sir, bananas. So you can see broken out by fund. We have multiple things that we oversee. The general fund portion you can see is relatively stable. That's because that's where most of our operations are housed. Risk management, same thing, mostly stable for now, although we know that in July, we have new insurance premiums that come around for property insurance, and we're all waiting to see what that will look like. Our work comp fund, same thing, relatively stable. Then you get into stimulus funds. We named this fund stimulus funds back in 2008 when we received the ERA money. We repurposed that fund for ARPA, but that's why it's called stimulus funds. You can see right now in the 2025 budget, we have exactly what Brent talked about yesterday, which is the state mental health hospital encumbrance that we've got for that project. Municipalities fight addiction. Miscellaneous grants. That $3 million. That's where we are housing right now the Kansas Health Foundation funding. That will go up to 3.5 million once we're able to get those attestations in about the additional funds and then draw down additional funds from the state. Municipalities Fight Addictions Fund. This is the opioid funding. This is where it will leave. Right now, there's only budget authority established for the amount that we paid to the Stedman Group earlier this year for the strategic plan. As you all approve specific projects, there will be budget authority, but we're not going to plan for that until we know what those costs are. Because of the way this fund is set up, we can just come to you and ask for that budget authority to be established, and you can vote 3-2 to do that. It's not like the general fund or these other specialized funds where we have to have a budget amount in August. So you can see 105 million now, 12.6 million requests for next year. So here's how that's broken out by category. Not going to get into that. We have no decision packages, revenue packages, or alternative reductions. So now we're going to start moving fast, I promise. Budgeted transfers, page 108 of your budget books. If you'll recall, this is where we're actually moving cash out of the general fund and into another fund. So by state law, that has to be done by resolution. So we take care of this as much as possible through your budget and the resolution that you sign the day of budget adoption. This is right now used for our risk management operations. So as we talked about with some of the settlements and things, you spend out of that fund under your policy, we are allowed to use fund balance to support risk management. So that's what's done here. Also, right now, your auto license fund subsidy is coming from this source. That'll be something that I know the treasurer will want to discuss with you in the coming months. And then finally, our arena facility fee match. So they assess $1.50 per ticket. That's paid over to the county at the end of the year. We match that dollar for dollar out of the general fund. That is the only, right now, general fund expense for the arena. In terms of strengths for budgeted transfers, obviously, we're trying to plan ahead. In terms of our weaknesses and threats, you can see we've already talked about insurance premiums and risk management. Auto license fund did not get any help from the legislature this year, so that's going to continue to be a threat to us until that can get resolved. And then, of course, our arena facility fee match, it's not necessarily a weakness per se, but we do have a long-term commitment to match those funds. So just something to be aware of. You can see because of the anticipated increases in all of our costs here, we are requesting 5.5 million in 2026. So moving over to contingency reserves on page 92, still in general government. What we're going to talk about here is basically what are contingency reserves. Again, because you have a certified budget that's approved in August and has to go through public hearing and all of that, we try and make sure you have adequate contingency budget. We don't necessarily tax, well, we do not tax to support contingency budget authority. If you draw on the contingency, we are using fund balance to support that, or one time like investment income or something through the course of a year. So obviously we have more threats than we've had in a long time in this area, between workforce pressures for wages, between tariffs and not knowing what that will look like and what that will have to do with inflation. And just the general uncertainty that we're facing, we are requesting slightly more budget authority. Now, this one looks a little different than your other slides. Most of your slides are oriented to the 2025 revised budget and the 2026 adopted. Here, I'm showing you adopted versus revised because I want you to see what the differences are and what we're actually asking for. So you'll see there's kind of a weird number in the operating reserve. That's because of changes that were made on budget adoption day last year to move some money around. We're bringing that up to $20 million in this request. Again, the size of your budget has increased significantly. We also know that there are some additional pressures that you all are talking about that we want to make sure we have adequate budget authority set aside if we need it. The BOCC contingency is brought back up to $250,000 where it has historically been. Our public safety contingency, we are requesting to remain at 7 million. Rainy day reserve remains at 15 million. You do have a specific policy for how the rainy day reserve itself can be used. You can't just go in and use this one with as much flexibility as you can the operating reserve. Our technology reserve, again, 1.5 million. We are removing the mental health contingency because we are dealing with that in other ways, mostly through the ComCare budget. And then this year, you may recall that there were some changes anticipated with the Fair Labor and Standards Act that was going to change at what rate we had to start paying people overtime. That was stayed by a court. And then we've heard that the Trump administration has no interest in pursuing that. So we don't anticipate that budget authority will be used this year, nor do we anticipate that we need it in next year's budget. So you can see we're requesting 43.7 million. I do want to point out that you have had a couple of uses of the contingency already this year, and that's mostly because of ARPA actions you took last year to end it early. If you remember, we did have a couple projects that were going to be funded in 25 and 26. Because ARPA ended early, we decided to put that cash into the general fund, and we were going to allow use of that cash in the next years to fund district court backlog and the lease here in this building. Any questions on this one before I jump ahead?
Lindsay, I've always wondered, what is the BOCC contingency and what?
It's for special projects you guys initiate. And so in the past, that's been used things. I think there was a drainage study. If we had to access it for, like, let's say the emergency winter shelter, that was a source of funding. So it's just those specific projects that are commissioner initiated. And so we have a pot of funding that's historically been set aside for that. Rather than just thinking about maybe a 20 million operating general fund, we kind of try and rein in those special projects from a commission perspective.
But along those lines, we also have a economic development fund.
Well, general fund, right?
Kind of blur a little bit between this one and the Devo fund.
We would use economic development for specific reasons. It would be tied to something that's specifically economic development. If you're doing like a storm drainage study, I would not say that is a source of economic development. Can you use your mic?
Commissioner, some of the community development funding requests in the past have come through the BOCC contingency that weren't specifically an economic development thing, but a different type of funding.
Not much.
Would you be able to give us a breakdown, maybe the last couple of years? That way we can just see kind of what does go in there, what doesn't.
It's magic. They actually had that prepared for me today. So yes, we'll just email it
wondered
to
if
you so
that's
you can
interesting. Yeah.
see it all.
Tom?
Out of BOCC contingency, is that what you were asking?
Yeah,
Yes.
just that one. I just curious what makes that up.
Generally, when these percolate up, you will, we'll brief all of you on what the potential is, Lori, and will, if she suggests that funding area, I'll brief you all, so you'll, the
Yeah,
body
yeah.
will know.
Certainly. Yeah. Okay.
That no contingency is touched without information to the commission, even if Tom approves it. Through budget action.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Moving to the next one, we're going to go into a new tab, the bond and interest tab. So this is where we pay debt service. Now, it's really important for me. I know, headache right now, bringing on. It's important to note that what's in bond and interest right now is based on what we plan to issue debt for through this year, and we will begin paying on in 2026. You're going to see a CIP presentation next week that will influence these numbers in the outer years, but this is pretty well set based on our expectations for what we intend to issue in 2025. So we do have a AAA credit rating. In the ACFR that you're going to see either today or tomorrow, you're going to see we're at 11.4% of our state legal debt ratio. So we are very, very low. We do know that a major threat exists at the federal level. We actually talked about it at a conference I was at last week, and that is tax exempt municipal bonds. So again, when we say tax exempt in this context, what we mean is the people who buy our bonds and we pay the interest to, right now, they don't have to pay any, basically any property tax, any income tax on that interest. What the feds are proposing to do potentially to help pay for the tax cuts would be to take this away. David Floyd in accounting just did an analysis recently, and we would expect to pay $1 million more in interest income on what we just issued last year, but for tax exempt municipal bonds. And NACO at a federal level estimates that taxpayers would pay an additional $6,000 per taxpayer if this was to go away. So on one side, there's a tax cut. On the other side, you're paying more because your local government now that needs to fund this, these infrastructure needs, doesn't have the funding to do that anymore. So actually, Dr. Gua, who's here again, was the leader of that presentation last week, or that conference last week. And also what we heard at that time is it's really important, not just for NACO or GFOA to come out against us, but it's really important for local governments to actually reach out, because those reps are saying, we really don't care about what you big groups say. We want to hear from our constituents. So just a heads up on that. We may be asking you for some support on that in the future. So you'll see what our anticipated debt service is here. A large part of that is the admin building. We also have the juvenile communities based services building that's planned in. And so some of that debt offsets. And again, this is okay. This is good. This is what we want. Because we know on this next slide, this is a really important slide to note. We have a lot of debt falling off, and we want it to be a stable debt levy as much as possible. And so you can see this really big one. I'm going off mic for a second. Don't yell at me, Nicole. And so we are trying to make sure that we are keeping a stable levy so that we don't inadvertently prevent the commission from being able to invest in necessary improvements down the road. So you can see we've got an awful lot of significant debt falling off in the next few years. We want to make sure we're in a position to strategically maintain that debt level because you're going to hear a significant number of projects coming before you next week with more than $23 million on the watch list that won't even be funded in the program we're going to give you. So moving past bond and interest again, because we know next week we're going to have more in-depth conversation on this with CIP. We're going to go back to culture and rec, way back in your books, and look at interest bank arena. So obviously having an arena is not a mandatory function of county government, but it's here now. So we have an agreement with ASM Global, formerly known as SMG. That agreement extends right now, today, through 2032. If they earn us 1.7 million, then they get to be auto extended through 2037. We are only about $100,000 from that figure today. And they have all this time left to get through that. So we're awfully close to that auto renewal category. We also, it's important to note that we don't pay a management fee on a month-to-month basis. They are set up to earn their management fee through the operating income that they make. So they get to keep the first $400,000 basically as their management fee. And then everything past that is split 50-50 between the county and arena folks. Also, when this contract was renegotiated several years ago, we built in that facility fee that we talked about. So $1.50 of every eligible ticket is assessed, collected, and paid to the county. And then we work with Lorien as a part of that budgeted transfer to move that cash then out of our county general fund into the arena fund as a dollar for dollar match. Those funds by contract may only be used for CIP at the arena. So we do have a very well-maintained facility right now. The NCAA is very impressed by us. So the pressure is there to keep that up so that we don't have a recreation of what we had out at the Coliseum that kind of led to the arena in the first place. So we know that we don't have a long-term funding strategy for the arena. It's as great as it is. It's now a 15-year-old building. At some point, we're going to have to replace the roof. We're going to have to do some of those things that aren't covered by typical insurance, and that's going to require some cash. And if you looked at your most recent quarterly, we were down to about $300,000 in the arena reserve, but that was before we got our payments for the last year's operating income and that facility fee payment. So what you'll see reflected in this budget request is unique because by the management agreement, they actually don't have to tell us what their budget is till October 1st. And because it's an enterprise fund, we have the flexibility to add the budget authority as there is cash. So you can see we've got $1,075,000 built in for now based on last year's asset replacement plan, but we'll continue to have those negotiations with them as we get closer to that date. One thing you guys are often picked on is the balance of the arena fund in our ACFR because it shows depreciation. So because it's showing depreciation, it frequently looks like the arena is losing money. It's not. It's just normal accounting for a facility that size and that magnitude. Okay, now it's really good that Tim's here because I'm going to move a little out of my comfort zone, but we're going to cover all of community development now in this section. So we're back behind your community development tab on page 728, and we're going to talk about the Extension Council. So I have verified what I'm about to say with both Tim and Justin Wagoner. So we do have some obligation to provide funding to the Extension Council under state statute because of how it's structured. However, the amount of funding that we are required to provide is not dictated. So I just want to make that distinction. Right now, we provide this operating funding of $743,000. Historically, it's been at $825,000 until this year. But we also provide the facility. It's maintained by our facilities department, pay all of the utilities. And then when they rent out that facility, they're able to retain those revenues. So it's important to know that this is not the only piece of the financial picture. In terms of what their strengths and opportunities are, obviously they're very popular, especially right now with the drought. I've seen them doing a lot of community outreach about what you can do with your gardens and things. Very popular with kids on the 4-H side of things, which we know half of our county is agriculture, so critical part. It is an aging facility. There is no long-term funding for that, so you will see some CIP requests for the extension building in what we present next week. Also, we know that just like as they're facing funding cuts from the county, as we're facing pressures, we know that they're probably also going to see some potential reductions in their state and federal funding as well. just because everyone's dollars are tight. Any questions or additions? And I'm going to look at Tim if he has anything that I've missed that I need to say. Okay. Questions? Okay. Next, then we're going to go to economic development. Economic development is obviously non-mandatory, but we know that effectively used, it's going to help us stimulate some job growth, assist with our business retention and expansion, improve quality of life, and the ultimate goal, right, is to increase the tax base, which overall helps with property tax reliance. So we do know that we have GWP, who does some synergized efforts for us on behalf of the region, City of Wichita. Opportunities are there in terms of our regional partnerships. And then just like everything else we've talked about, our threats continue to be tariffs, the uncertainty. We are not the most generous in terms of offering incentives for people to come to our community. And a lot of that's by design, but it does mean that it does position some other communities differently from us. So we talk about the Economic Development Fund a lot. It's not really a fund. It's a program that lives within the general fund. And you can see that last year there was a reduction. That reduction has been, well, there were two reductions. There was the intentional reduction of $100,000. And then when you heard Public Works talk before about their $100,000 for the Northeast Expressway study, this was the source of that funding. Okay, I've said something bad. What have I said that's bad here? Turn on your mics.
Nothing bad. He said you're an East Sider. You said Northeast Expressway. It's
Oh,
West
I'm
Expressway.
sorry. It was a Freudian slip.
Yes.
Northwest.
Thank you.
Bypass. Ha ha ha. Now I'm really being mean. What? No, West is not best. We're gonna start a fight. And I'm gonna win because I've got the budget, just so you know. Okay, anyway. Focusing. So we brought that back up to 1.7 million in our contractual request. Plus, as I mentioned before, Anissa, who's our economic development analyst, is funded out of this budget, though she was shown on our finance org chart. And then commodities are, whoa, it would be how cool if I showed you the slide. Sorry, y'all. So the commodities budget is flat here. Community development, community programs. There are only 2 programs that are funded through this particular community program source. That would be the Mediation Center at $8,000 and then Oaklawn Transit. So again, because Oaklawn is not technically in the city of Wichita, we do pay for there to be a bus line that is operated by Wichita Transit in that area. It's about $40,000 a year. Neither of those things obviously are mandatory, but you can see how those dollars play out. They're flat with last year. You can read the slide. I'm going to keep going. WSU, a frequent favorite, page 739. This slide is a little different than the other slides that you see because it's really important to understand the history of the WSU mill levy and how it operates today. So in 1963, WSU became a state regents university. Before that, it was a municipal university. When that happened, they had some debt that they still had, and the state said, okay, you can levy 1.5 mils in order to pay off that debt. But it didn't really set any kind of parameters on when that mill levy was supposed to expire. So in, let's see, the 1980s, 1987, there we go. We signed this interlocal agreement that basically said WSU is able to use the proceeds of the 1.5 mils to go toward general support. And it's to be set by the Board of Trustees. City doesn't get to say how it's spent. County doesn't get to say how it's spent. WSU Board of Trustees gets to say how it's spent. Now, in 2014, the county actually issued bonds on behalf of WSU through our PBC. And so that means that we are on the hook to pay those funds. It's on our, you'll see it in our ACFR. We are on the hook to repay those bonds out of the proceeds of the 1.5 mils through 2054. Also, last year, we allowed WSU to essentially borrow our credit rating because it was being funded with the proceeds of the 1.5 mils to issue debt to fund phase 1 of Cessna Stadium. Now that was built for the typical 20-year term. So regardless, to some extent, Sedgwick County is on the hook for some portion of the use of these 1.5 mils through 2054. So strength wise, one of the things that it's lauded for when we go through a credit rating assessment for any bonds associated with this is it's guaranteed with that 1.5 mils. In terms of a weakness from the Sedgwick County perspective, when we talk about the revenue neutral rate, this is really important to understand. Because it is set at 1.5 mils, when the assessed value goes up, let's say it goes up 8%, they get 1.5 mils of whatever that assessed value is. Let's say the commission says you all, for your portion of the mill levy, only wants to capture 5% of that. Or let's say even more, you want to be revenue neutral. If you want to be revenue neutral, you have to go in and offset the county's levy by the amount of dollars that WSU is going up. So you would literally have to subsidize WSU with a reduction in your operating revenues in order to be revenue neutral. And that is something we have asked the state legislature to address, even if it's just that, because under the old property tax lid, at least they took that into account. If you were issuing bonds or if you were doing a levy, sorry guys, long day. If you were doing a levy on behalf of any governmental entity, you were exempted from that, not now. So that's really important to understand. So because it's not just the straight property tax, but property tax also is derived from motor vehicle taxes. That's why you'll see this amount is greater than what you would expect 1.5 mils of assessed value to be. Also, they get their share of back taxes that are paid. And so that's why you'll see it's about 12.3 million that's budgeted next year. Part of that, 500,000, is contingency budget. We don't necessarily plan to pay to give them that, but if we actually collect more revenue than we think we're going to, we have to be able to pay it out to them. And so we include a $500,000 contingency to make sure we can cover that, because 2 years ago, we actually collected way more than we anticipated. And we didn't have enough budget authority to pay them. We had to pay more the next year with extra budget authority. So just understand this is how much is going to WSU by virtue of the 1.5 mils. So I really only did this because I thought Kelly Arnold was going to do his normal thing of having a wildcat, but he didn't. And so I wanted to be extra obnoxious and show all the Bill Self trophies.
Well, Lindsay, Kelly Arnold's picture won't have all those trophies on it. So that's why
it wouldn't.
This is
be
good.
A really small picture.
I appreciate, I mean, there's a lot to go through in this presentation. No, it's good. That mill levy question comes up. It comes up internally here, but it comes up from constituents, a lot of confusion. I think we've had a brief conversation. Can we even change this here?
So if we had wanted to get out of the MOA with the city of Wichita, we would have had to tell them by May 1st. So we're past that point now. And again, we can never fully be out of it till 2055 because we are on the hook. We, Sedgwick County, are on the hook.
I want to ask more of a technical question too. In their budget book, they actually account for that they levy the tax. And I don't understand when I look at their budget book, Wichita, City of Wichita, that they levy the tax. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Do. So they show that, I think, because they statutorily have an obligation to provide 1.5 mils. So they show the worth of that. But I do agree that it is misleading because it appears as though they're getting that money from City of Wichita. That City of Wichita is paying that out from the budget, and they are not. It is not included in their levy. Yeah. It is only coming from Sedgwick County. We have 100%.
I just want to make sure there's something there I wasn't
payment.
understanding.
No.
Okay.
It is confusing. I agree.
Okay. Any questions for this presentation? You did a good job. Yeah.
Sorry. It's long.
No, it's good. A lot there. Okay. Thank you, Lindsay. Lauren?
That's it for today. We'll be back at 1 o'clock tomorrow.
1 o'clock tomorrow. See you then.
Yeah. Well, you'll